YouTube, the 2025 NBA regular season is so close. Just a few weeks away now at the time of me recording this video. And while I think 2025 is going to be a great NBA season, I think the playoffs are going to be even better. And that's why in this video, I'm going to be predicting the entire 2025 NBA playoffs for both the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference, including the play-in tournament and the NBA Finals, folks. We have done it. We have traversed the wild, wild west, where I predicted every team's ranking for the regular season in part 1 of this 3-part series. We have explored the Eastern Conference and every team's ranking for the 2025 regular season in part 2 of the 3-part series. Now, just like the playoffs, we're at the end of the road, folks. This is where it really counts, and I'm going to be using all of the seedings that I have calculated for the regular season for both conferences and using the seedings from part 1 and part 2 to predict the 2025 playoffs. I am so excited to share it with you guys. This is going to be a good one. If you guys haven't seen part 1 and part 2, the links will be down in the description. I highly recommend it, as it is very much relevant to this video, obviously, because I'm using the seedings I already predicted. We're going to start with the play-in tournament and work our way through the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference round by round, series by series. Without further ado, folks, let's get right into my 2025 NBA playoff prediction video, including the play-in tournament and the 2025 NBA Finals. Let's go. All right, folks, so obviously before we get into the playoffs, we're going to have to dive into the 2025 play-in tournament using my rankings from part 1 and part 2. Let's predict all these games. I'm going to make a disclaimer before I get into this entire video. Obviously, I'm assuming everybody's healthy for all of these matchups. That's kind of the way we're doing this list. And so here are the matchups for the 2025 play-in tournament with my seedings. We're going to start with the Western Conference and work our way to the East. And in the Western Conference, for the 9 and 10 seed game, this game will determine who plays the loser of the 7-8 seed, and whoever wins that game will obviously win the 8 seed in the playoffs. And so for the 9 and 10 seed, we have the Los Angeles Lakers and the Los Angeles Clippers. That's a fun play-in game, folks. The Battle of LA. Interesting to see what kind of home court advantage either team gets. And I have the Lakers winning home court here with the 9 seed. And actually, I think the Lakers are going to have to win this game. All right. So, LeBron is getting to the end of his career. He doesn't have that many seasons left. And so you obviously are going to have to figure that he's going to be putting everything he has into this play-in tournament game to earn maybe, potentially one of his last playoff berths. And LeBron and AD take out the Clippers in this scenario and move on to play the loser of the 7-8 seed game for their playoff spot. And so the Clippers, good season, obviously being a 10 seed in this wild Western Conference, it's a great feat in my opinion, but I just think the Lakers have a better roster, right? And so they're going to win this game. Moving on to the Eastern Conference for the 9 and 10 seed game. This is between the Hawks and the Hornets, right? Two teams with a lot of young talent. Interesting to see how they stack up against each other. I have the Hawks winning this game, all right? So no upsets as far as this play-in tournament yet, right? And so the Hawks, same as the Lakers, they'll have another shot to save their season, play the loser of the 7-8 game. Hornets, back in the play-in tournament, obviously a great deal of accomplishments there. It's been a long time since they were considered even a threat to anybody in the Eastern Conference. Another team with a lot of young talent who's hoping to, put some wins together this season. I think they land the 10th seed, but unfortunately get bounced out in the first play-in tournament game. And so now we're just waiting for the rest of the matchups to dictate who the Lakers and the Hawks play. And, in the Western Conference, we have the Grizzlies Suns as the 7-8 seed. Obviously, the winner of this game will just automatically advance to the 7th seed in the 2025 NBA playoffs. And I have the first upset alert, folks. The Phoenix Suns are going to advance to the 7th seed in the Western Conference, and the Lakers will play the Grizzlies. Whoever wins that game will be the 8th seed in the West. All right. Listen, Grizzlies, don't be too discouraged. Still got a chance to win your season back, right? But the Suns, listen, this is a great roster. This has the top end talent like not a lot of other teams do. In a play-in tournament game, when it's just like one game that could determine your season and your playoff seeding, I always tend to go with like who has the better superstars a lot of times, because it's kind of a game 7 type scenario, right? We always hear about like, oh, who would you take game 7? This guy or this guy? If you had to win one game, who would you take? I take the team with the better stars, 90% of the time. There's always exceptions, right? But in this case, the, Phoenix Suns with Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, obviously I think they're going to give everything they have to a play-in tournament game to win the better seeding. And so one game on the line type scenarios, you got to trust KD to bring it home, and the Suns advance to the 7th seed. Now, as far as the Cavaliers heat in the Eastern Conference, this is going to be a good game. Big interior presence on both teams. You both have a physical kind of roster on the interior and the front court, right? You play good defense, both of you guys. And I think, obviously there were some Cavs fans in the Eastern Conference video, the part 2 video of the series, pretty upset with me that I had the Cavs at, the 7th seed in the conference. And I got a lot of flack for that in the comment section. While that will not affect my prediction for this game, I just had to note that, all right? So Cavaliers versus Heat. Who wins this game? Well, I think it's going to be the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers, like I said, said, in a one-game scenario, I think you trust the team with the better star power more often than not. Again, a lot of these rankings are hard to do before we see what these teams look like this season. We only know their rosters and what they did last year, right? But the Cavaliers, in my opinion, do have a little bit better star power than the Miami Heat. Although the Heat's, zone defense and their scheme is going to be a problem for the Cavaliers, I expect the Cavaliers to win this game and advance to the 7th seed of the NBA playoffs, all right? The Heat will be forced to win or go home in the next game versus the Hawks, just like the Lakers, to save their season in the Eastern Conference and win that 8th seed for their team. And so now we're moving on to the second round of the play-in tournament, folks. Stay with me, all right? The Lakers versus the Grizzlies, a newly formed rivalry. While you don't have Dylan Brooks anymore if you're the Grizzlies, I'm sure a lot of those, harsh feelings still linger for the Lakers, and I'm sure the Lakers would say the same thing. Now, assuming the Grizzlies, again, are everybody's healthy, you have a great team, just flat out. John Morant, Desmond Bane, hopefully GG Jackson with his injury is back by this time of the season. Jaren Jackson Jr., Zach Edey, newly acquired center in the 2025 draft as a lottery pick. All that being said, I gotta go with the Lakers. Again, trusting LeBron in a win-or-go-home type scenario, I just think you have to do it. The Lakers are not known for losing play-in tournament games. I actually don't think they've ever done that. So I'm gonna have to go with the Lakers. I apologize to Grizzlies fans. Again, I think it's just a good season winning a 7th seed in the Western Conference. This Western Conference is so loaded that even making a play-in tournament has to be a great feeling. It's going to require at least 45 wins, or anywhere from 40 to 45 wins. And so that is a good season regardless of the outcome of the play-in tournament. Put another good season together after all the turmoil last season with the injuries. You just got to be happy about that. But the Lakers advance to the 8th seed in the 2025 NBA playoffs. We'll have to see later in the video how they do. Now, for the last play-in tournament game, all right, we're going to have the Hawks and the Heat. These teams have actually faced each other in the play-in tournament before. The Hawks ended up losing that matchup. I like the Hawks roster, but I don't like them as much as the Heat, and I'm going to have to go with the Miami Heat to win the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. And as we know, the Heat, probably one of the more dangerous 8 seeds of any team in history, right? Like, this team as an 8 seed is always going to be a threat to the 1 seed. In this case, it's going to be the Boston Celtics. We'll have to see how that matchup bears out in a little bit in this video, but I will say, for the Hawks, kind of similar to the Grizzlies. You've had an up and down go of it over the last few years, and just putting together a young roster with a lot of, good high upside pieces has to be enough to say that this was a successful season. Making the play-in tournament after struggling to put a lot of things together over the past couple years, I think you got to be okay with that. Obviously, you made the play-in tournament last season, but this is definitely a new type of roster. This is a new direction your franchise is headed in, and so I think the play-in tournament's a good season for the Hawks, even though they lose to the Heat in the second game. These are the winners of the play-in tournament, folks. So if you stuck around, congratulations to you, because now we're going to enter the 2025 NBA playoffs. We have the Lakers and Heat as 8 seeds in their respective conferences, the Suns and the Cavs as 7 seed in their respective conferences. And let's go ahead and advance to the 2025 playoffs as if this were a 2K My League simulation, all right? We're going to start in the Western Conference in the first round. I'm going to be doing it round by round, but I'm going to work west to east, all right? So the bracket looks like this for the Western Conference. We got Thunder Lakers, we got Mavs Pelicans, we got Nuggets Kings, and we got Wolves Suns. These are some great matchups here. I can't wait to dive into each one. We're going to start our way at the top and work our way to the bottom, starting with the Thunder and the Lakers, all right? This is going to be a hard-fought series of young and old, right? LeBron James hoping to overcome the 1 seed and probably the best team in the Western Conference in the Oklahoma City Thunder on one of his last playoff runs. The Thunder looking to dethrone the King, and SGA and company looking to emerge as the new kings in the NBA. No offense, Sacramento. This would be a very interesting series in my opinion. This is where the real analysis of the video probably starts, if you guys are here for that. So obviously the Thunder making a big improvement to their interior, adding Isaiah Hartenstein. This is going to be a big boost in terms of the Lakers matchup, or any team in the Western Conference that has a lot of good big men, like the Mavericks, like the Nuggets, like the Wolves, right? Most of these teams have, great interior presences, and so the Lakers are no exception. Having AD and LeBron on the interior on both ends is a massive force, but Hartenstein will, fare well on the rebounding category. You have Chet Holmgren to make up for some versatile defense. You have maybe the best 3 perimeter defender tandem in the league. You have Alex Caruso, who can lock up either D'Lo or Austin Reeves. Another thing is Alex Caruso has an advantage of, playing with the Lakers. Maybe he can help in that regard in terms of, knowing what they like to do ahead of time. Obviously, it's a different coaching regime, but it is something to note. You have SGA, who's going to be a driving force in this series. How well he plays, and as far as he goes, that's where the Thunder will go. J-Dub might be the LeBron James matchup defensively. Offensively, I think the Thunder might have it. Now, I think they have a little bit more versatile of a team, but the Lakers might have a little bit more star power in the front court. Overall, I think the Thunder win this series in 6 games. I think it's a good fight from LeBron and AD and company, but I just think at the end of the day, talent beats experience in this regard, and the Thunder will advance to the West semis, where they will play the winner of the Mavs and the Pelicans. Unfortunately for the Lakers, again, this is a tough team to predict because they have a lot of stuff up in the air. Whether or not they'll trade a big time blockbuster trade at the deadline, whether or not Coach Redick will be the right hire, these things are up in the air. I could see the Lakers, finishing anywhere from the 8 seed to, the 6 seed or the 5 seed even, and, making all the way to the conference finals or the finals if they trade for a third star. We'll just have to see how that all works out. Have to see what their, team looks like under Coach Redick. But either way, Thunder, again, just the more talented team, more versatile team, more well-balanced team with better legs underneath them in general. I think the Thunder win this series, even though it's 6 games and a little bit of a favorable margin. So Thunder advance to the West semis. Moving on to the 2 seed versus the 7 seed. This is a kind of a rematch of last season's playoffs where the Wolves would go ahead and sweep the Phoenix Suns in the first round of the playoffs. And so the Suns, they're going to have revenge on their minds, right? This is a new look Suns team. They have a lot more stability at the point guard position. They have a lot more versatile defenders than they did last season. They have a new coach, and Coach Budenholzer maybe riles up the troops to take down the greatest defense in the league in the Minnesota Timberwolves with all-time great scorers from the perimeter like Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, with an extremely talented third option in Bradley Beal, with an offensive rebounding machine in Yusuf Nurkic. How do you respond? A great team defense, and I think that's what the Wolves have, and that's what they'll have this season. They clearly have the defensive assets on all 3 levels to be able to at least slow down the Suns as best as anyone could. It's a bad matchup for the Suns, and I have the Wolves winning this series again, led by Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns with huge scoring production, with monster defensive outings from Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jaden McDaniels, and Rudy Gobert. And I predict that Rob Dillingham will have a great series matched up against a guy like Tyus Jones defensively or Bradley Beal defensively. I don't think they're going to cook the Suns like last season in a 4-0 sweep. I'm going to give the Suns 2 games, and I'm going to say this is a much better series than it was last time. The Suns win 2, the Wolves win 4, the Wolves advance to the West semis just like they did last season against the Suns. This might mean that the Suns have to go into some sort of back to the drawing board type scenario for the 2025 offseason. We'll have to see how it works out, but I predict the Suns, unfortunately, falling once again to the dominant defense of the Minnesota Timberwolves and the offensive surge of Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. Wolves in 6. We're going to go back up top to the 4 seed, and we're going to be predicting the Dallas Mavericks versus New Orleans Pelicans. And I actually think this will be a very good series. I think the Pelicans are one of the more X-Factor type teams in the Western Conference. No question about it. We have to see how Zion Williamson comes out and plays this season with his new weight loss and body transformation. I think this is going to be a massive boost to the Pelicans on both ends. I think Zion takes a big leap defensively. I think he refines his overall skill set in general, which helps the Pelicans a ton. You also have great perimeter defenders to guard guys like Luka and Kyrie one-on-one, like Herb Jones. You add DeJounte Murray to maybe keep up with a team like the Mavericks in terms of shot creation. I mean, think about the shot creation on this team, 1 to 3. You have CJ McCollum, DeJounte Murray, and Brandon Ingram. I mean, this team's playmaking and shot creation is going to be off of the charts. I will say the interior is going to be a nightmare for the Pelicans in this series with their center issues, assuming no trades happen by the deadline. With the roster they have now constructed, it's Daniel Tice and a rookie center who I like quite a bit, but is a rookie center in Yves Missi. And so Gafford and Lively are going to eat this team alive on the interior. I think offensively, obviously this team can match up with almost anyone the Pelicans. They have certainly the firepower, the playmaking, and all of the skill sets required to compete offensively with a team like the Mavericks and hang in there in a 7-game series. But defensively on the interior, they are going to get cooked, and I have the Mavericks winning this one in 5. Sorry, Pelicans, unless a trade's made by the deadline, I think the 2-man duo of Derek Lively II and Daniel Gafford are going to be a big time problem for you guys, assuming Yves Missi plays like a rookie and not a 5-year veteran at center defensively on the interior. I have the Mavs winning this handedly in 5, advancing to the West semis where they will play the Oklahoma City Thunder for the 2nd time in a row, a rematch of the West semis last season. 4 seed versus 1 seed. Who's going to win? We'll have to see. Let's move on to the 3-6 seed matchup. Now the Nuggets, the 3 seed against the Sacramento Kings, the 6 seed. The Nuggets losing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. This is a big time loss for their team. You do gain Russell Westbrook, you do gain Dario Saric. Unfortunately, your top draft pick in Deron Holmes II goes down with an Achilles injury. That is awful news because they really needed him. I predict the Kings adding DeMar DeRozan in the offseason, boosting them up to a legit playoff contender again in the Western Conference. Malik Monk stays healthy. Kevin Huerter returns to his former glory of the 2023 season. Domantas Sabonis dominates the NBA again on the interior and with his basketball IQ. But at the end of the day, they will have to face that monster, and that is Nikola Jokic, the best player on the planet in terms of basketball. Who's going to guard Jokic? Is it Sabonis? Do you double him? That doesn't seem to work very well for any team that tries, right? Do you put maybe a bigger matchup like Alex Len on him off the bench? Do you put just a lot of different bodies on him? I don't know. I think, this is going to be a big test for the Kings, but I will say the Kings' style of play I don't think is a good matchup for the Nuggets offensively, because the Kings get up and down the court in a hurry. They like to speed up the pace of play. While the Nuggets can also play like this, I think it might just be too much for this team to handle offensively certain nights with their lack of depth, right? They're going to run the Nuggets ragged, and they're going to have to make a lot of substitutions because the pace of play will be higher. And this will not fare well for the Nuggets in terms of their conditioning and in terms of their lack of depth. But I will say, I think this will be a shootout of a series, and I think the Nuggets win it in 7. I don't think it's a good matchup for the Nuggets. I think the Kings would do better, much better in this series than a lot of people would predict. The Kings might have the advantage in a late game scenario. So if you can keep the game close, you might have the advantage with a clutch performer like DeMar DeRozan, who is always certainly capable of taking a good last shot and making a good last shot, with De'Aaron Fox being one of the most clutch performers in the league. With the speed and youth of this team probably really hampering the Nuggets and tiring them out throughout a series, you could say there might be more blowouts in this series than close games, but in a close game, I probably give the edge to the Kings, low key. I also think the speed of De'Aaron Fox is going to be a tough matchup for the Nuggets perimeter defenders. I'm not sure who would even guard this guy one-on-one. He is a blur in transition, right? I do think it's a close series. I give the edge to the Nuggets slightly. Again, 7 games. This would be a really close one in my opinion. I don't think the Nuggets are this unbeatable juggernaut that they were a couple of years ago, but I also think having Jokic and still your core remaining of Jamal Murray, who will play much better in this playoffs than he did last playoffs, you will have the advantage in that regard. And so sorry, Kings fans, the crown will not be taken from Jokic, all right? I think you got to be okay with that result. 7 games against the best player in the world, and a team that just won a championship just a couple years ago. As the 3 seed, you gave it a good fight, but it just wasn't enough. Nuggets win in 7 and advance to the West semis. And that will conclude the first round of Western Conference action in the playoffs. Here are the matchups. Thunder, Mavs, Wolves, Nuggets. A lot of these series are going to be really good. No upsets yet in the playoffs. We'll have to see how it turns out. 2 rematches of last season. Wolves, Nuggets, another rematch. A very volatile series last season where there were a ton of blowouts game to game, and it was hard to predict. We'll get into the second round in a second. Let's jump over to the Eastern Conference for their first round matchups and then predict those, and then we'll work our way back until eventually we reach the finals. Let's get into it. Again, folks, here are the matchups of the Eastern Conference in the first round. We have the Celtics Heat in the 1-8 seed showdown. We have the Knicks and the Cavaliers, 2nd seed, 7th seed showdown. We have the Bucks and the Pacers as the 4 and 5 matchup, and we have my Philadelphia 76ers versus the Orlando Magic in the 3-6 seed matchup. This is what the bracket looks like. Again, we're going to do the same order as last time. Let's get into these predictions. Just a quick side note, if you're wondering why there aren't any upsets yet, I generally think it is difficult to predict upsets when we haven't seen these teams play in the regular season. Even if the seedings were all correct by the end of the season, my predictions would likely be very different, just because there are certain little things you can notice within a team during a regular season, during a certain matchup with a playoff team, that you might favor over the other team. We just don't know what those are yet because we haven't seen these teams play and we haven't seen what their regular season body of work looks like. And so it is a little bit difficult to predict upsets, but I will be trying my best to keep it fair, as an NBA playoff might be. Starting with the Celtics versus the Heat, the 1-8 seed matchup. We know that this is another rematch of last season. It actually worked out this way with a lot of teams. I didn't, expect that to happen. I didn't really do that on purpose. The Celtics and the Heat, they have a lot of crazy series, throughout the past few years. The Heat, somehow, some way seem to give the Celtics just a ton of issues, and I think Heat culture is responsible for it, all right? So the Celtics, their talent is going to have to overcome the Heat culture once again. The Celtics by far the more talented team in my opinion. I think the Celtics are more talented than any team in the NBA. That goes for the West as well. When predicting this series, I struggled on how many games I think this would be, and I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to Miami. I think they steal 2 of them, but I have the Celtics advancing. The Heat, again, this team has dog mentality. They fight through every single piece of adversity they're given, but at a certain point, talent just beats work ethic. Not saying the Celtics don't try hard, but the Heat obviously have a very different mentality. It's given them a lot of issues in the past in regards to the Celtics, but you just can't overcome the Celtics top 6, in my opinion, with what the Miami Heat have right now on their roster. And so I have the Celtics winning this series in 6 games, advancing to the East semis, moving on to the 2 and 7 seed matchup. All right, Cavs fans, very upset with me. Again, I'm a Sixers fan. I try to keep my biases all out of the way when I'm making these videos. I think I have a pretty good track record of doing that, I like to think. If you disagree, you can let me know down in the comments. But I will say, the Knicks, as my biggest rival right now, is a Sixers fan. I have a ton of respect for their fan base. I have a ton of respect for the Cavaliers fan base, even though we're all Eastern Conference rivals here. I try to look at things objectively, and this is going to be a really good series, folks. The interior presence of the Cavs could give the Knicks issues, again, assuming your backup center issue and your center issue in general. If you're a Knicks fan, your size won't be a problem throughout a 7-game series because you make a move at the deadline. With the rosters constructed right now, I think think this is a tough series for the Knicks on the interior. However, I do think the Knicks are going to give the Cavaliers a ton of issues on the perimeter, okay? When you have Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell as your primary offensive options, the Knicks are a boogeyman matchup for you guys, all right? Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby could have DG and Spida in a straitjacket, and so I think the Knicks win this series in 6 games. I do think the interior is a problem for the Knicks, but I don't think it's as much of a problem as your best 2 players offensively if you're the Cavs, being traveled with all across the floor by much bigger and lengthier defenders. This is probably the best perimeter matchup the Knicks could have as far as their defense goes with a team in this conference. And I think the Knicks win this game in 6. I don't think the Cavs get a fair shake in this series, particularly just because it's a terrible matchup for the Cavaliers. I think they beat a few of these teams in the East if they match up against them, just not the Knicks. I'm sorry, Cavs fans. I have to be real with you guys again. Maybe not give you the most favorable outcome, but I'm just calling it like I see it, folks. Knicks in 6. Moving on to the Bucks Pacers, the first round matchup of last season. This time Giannis Antetokounmpo is healthy. This time the chemistry between Giannis and Dame I predict to be much better than it was last season. And listen, the Pacers are growing. I mean, they have so many high upside young guys that are going to take a big step next season, including Tyrese Halliburton. Hopefully he can stay healthy, but like the early season version of himself that he was last season as an MVP candidate. But as far as I see it right now, if Giannis is healthy, this team goes down in 6 games. I have the Milwaukee Bucks beating the Indiana Pacers in their rematch with a full healthy roster on both sides in 6. Giannis is just too much for this interior of the Indiana Pacers defense. When you're talking about Miles Turner, obviously a great defender, obviously a great rim protector, one of the best the league has. But listen, Brook Lopez and Giannis, this front court's bigger. You know, it's just bigger than you guys. I think Pascal's a versatile defender. I just don't think he can handle Giannis. The size difference of the Bucks is very large in my opinion, and I think the Bucks have enough offense to generate to match up with the Indiana Pacers. You know, big time pace of play. They're up and down type of offense, run and gun style, you know, transition. I do think the age of some of these Milwaukee Bucks players, you know, could come into play. Guys that are not necessarily the fastest players in the world that you have to keep on the floor, like Brook Lopez, like Chris Middleton. But I do think overall in a half court setting, the Bucks are a much better team. And I think, you know, they will have enough offense to be able to sustain the run and gun pace of play that the Indiana Pacers will throw at them. Just don't love the matchup for the Pacers. I'm going to give the Bucks the edge. Much more physical of a team. They're going to be able to do the dirty work a little bit better. Bucks in 6. My Philadelphia 76ers as the 3 seed versus the Orlando Magic. Of course, this is a hypothetical scenario where Joel Embiid is perfectly healthy for the entire playoffs, all right? So obviously that's going to change the outcome of this series quite a bit. And, you know, I'm going to be honest. I think my team is a little bit better of a roster than the Magic. You know, the Magic certainly have a ton of, you know, different things that the Sixers are going to struggle with, like their size. The Sixers really don't have a traditional power forward sized player on their roster, okay? And that goes for the defensive skill set as well. We just don't have a power forward, all right? Maybe that could change by the deadline, but guys like Paolo Banchero, guys like Jonathan Isaac, guys like Franz Wagner, guys like Goga Bitadze, right? We have the center spot held down with Embiid and Drummond, but the 4 spot is an issue, right? We're going to have problems guarding Paolo Banchero. I think Paul George could be a good matchup for him. I think Franz Wagner, you know, you could certainly say Kelly Oubre Jr. or Caleb Martin could be good options there defensively, but I do think the size, like not even just the height and length, the bulk of these guys is going to give the Sixers issues. I think there's going to be a lot of points in the paint for the Magic in this series that the Sixers just can't control. However, the Sixers do have the star power by a mile. I mean, you know, Jalen Suggs on Maxey, I don't love that matchup. Obviously, you have a ton of size if you're the Magic. KCP, you know, could track well with some of our guards, you know, but I just think overall, Sixers have much better of an offensive team, and I think the defense is good enough to compete with what kind of defensive schemes, you know, Coach Mosley is going to throw at the Sixers. And so I think these are pretty low scoring games in general. You know, obviously the Magic, I think they're going to have the best defense in the entire conference this year, but I just think in a half court setting, the Sixers are much more dynamic of an offensive team, and I give them the edge. This is going to be a really tough physical series on the interior. On the perimeter, I think the Sixers clearly have the edge, and, you know, kind of all 3 levels, I think are just a little bit better of a team. You know, defensively, I think the Magic are going to be better. They're going to put more effort into that side of the floor. They certainly could be a little bit more physical than the Sixers. I think that's something you could easily say. I had the Sixers winning this series in a hard fought either 6 or 7 games. I think it's going to be a close series, but I do have the Sixers probably in 6 or 7, right? So that is, you know, the total first round, you know, matchup predictions for the East and the West. You know, in the East semis, we're going to have the Celtics and the Bucks. It'll be fun to see that matchup again. Haven't seen it in a while. And these 2 teams are, you know, tough to match up, you know, against each other with, right? Because they both have freakish, unique talents on both sides of the ball. It's going to be a fun series. As far as the, you know, other bracket, we have a rematch of the Knicks and the 76ers. Again, this will be fun for the fans, you know, maybe not so polite and positive for the fans. It'll be certainly toxic like it was last season, but I'm here for it. I'm going to make an effort this season to not be as toxic, but I hope people join me in that. I don't think it's productive, and I think it makes the experience worse for most people. But I will say the reason we're such big NBA fans is we love competition, and this is the ultimate competition of a rivalry that two teams are evenly matched. Knicks, Sixers, Celtics, Bucks. Let's move back to the West for the West semis. The Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Dallas Mavericks. Second time in a row that these two teams face off in the West semis. Man, this is a tough one to predict for me. When I was doing these predictions, I was really struggling. I kept going back and forth on I like this thing about the Mavs, I like this thing about the Thunder. Holy cow, this is going to be a good series. 7 games either way. I'm not going to say my prediction yet. We're going to talk about the specifics. This series is going 7. I don't care. Listen, the Mavs got a ton better in the offseason. There's just no question about it. They had an A+ offseason, one of the best in the West, right? So did the Thunder though, right? A+ offseason for them as well. I mean, both of these teams addressed big needs on their team. The thing about the Mavs last season, I think that separated them from the Thunder, as far as that series went, was their 2 big men. Gafford and Lively were punishing the Thunder on the inside of the floor every single possession. It felt like, on both ends of the floor. They had a lot of trouble, the Thunder, keeping up with that. Isaiah Hartenstein's going to be a huge positive in this regard. I mean, this is a legit 7-footer with, legit center size. This is going to allow Chet Holmgren to guard, basically be kind of a free safety in the middle of this defense, right? And so I just don't think the Mavs, lob threats are going to be as effective this year. I don't think they're going to be able to bully the Thunder on the interior. Now, on the flip side of things, the Thunder have 2 players that I think are going to take massive leaps this season, including Chet Holmgren and J-Dub, right? These guys are going to be all-star caliber players this season. And now you add Alex Caruso. I mean, this is a great matchup for the Thunder now that the big man situation is settled, and they now have the size and abilities to compete with these Mavericks bigger players, as well as the reason this is such a great matchup for the Thunder this season is because of the perimeter defense they've added in the offseason. I mean, again, you're going to have SGA, Lou Dort, Cason Wallace, and Alex Caruso to be able to, switch on Luka and Kyrie all throughout a game, not to mention J-Dub, Chet Holmgren, and Hartenstein for the size. I mean, J-Dub, a great defender, Chet Holmgren, DPOY candidate potentially next season. Listen, this team is the most switchable team in the West. I think personally, defensively, they are the Thunder, right? Now that the rebounding thing is settled, now that you're gonna be able to guard these lobs a little bit better. Listen, the Mavs adding Klay Thompson is going to make this difficult. I don't care who is your perimeter, defenders. You just can't account for that shooting. You just can't account for that floor spacing and gravity that he's going to add to Luka and Kyrie's games. You're not going to be able to really double Luka and Kyrie. But the problem for the Mavericks is the Thunder have some of the best individual one-on-one defenders, so they don't really need to double when you have Alex Caruso guarding Luka Doncic. You could just trust him on an ISO. And so this is the problem for the Mavs. 90% of teams are not going to be able to handle this, right? The Thunder are going to be able to. They have good enough individual defenders to where they don't have to double, and they can feel okay with their matchups. I have the Thunder winning this series in 7 games and moving on to the Western Conference Finals. People are not going to like this. Mavs fans are another fan base that's kind of upset with me. Listen, they're just a little bit more talented, and it's just not a great matchup for the Mavs anymore. Now that you've addressed the center and you have some of the best individual defensive talents in the league on the perimeter, the reason I think the Mavs got so much better offensively is because you can't double Luka and Kyrie in 90% of situations. They don't have to because they have Alex Caruso and SGA to be able to guard those guys. So at the end of the day, man, I think the Thunder, again, just more talented, more versatile on both sides. I give them the slightest edge over the Mavericks to advance to the Western Conference Finals for the first time since KD. Moving on to the rematch of the 2023 playoffs. This was a great 7-game series last season. I expect this to be a great 7-game series this season. You have the greatest defense in the league, the Minnesota Timberwolves. They will be the best defense in the NBA, in my opinion. You have the Denver Nuggets, the best player in the world and the best 2-man combo, Murray and Jokic. I think Murray has a much better playoff series against the Wolves this season. That was kind of the biggest issue with the Nuggets last season, right? Was Murray's play and his inability to hit those big perimeter shots, and you saw the Wolves take a lot of that stuff away. Now you lose KCP, and so who's guarding Anthony Edwards? You might say, well, it's going to be a group effort, right? You can't really trust anybody individually, right? They don't necessarily have the best shot creation other than Ant. So at the end of the day, you can make it tough, double Ant, trap him every time he crosses the half-court line, and just put bodies on shooters and close out effectively, right? Put a lot of effort into closeouts. You're not going to be able to really do that as much now that Rob Dillingham is a Minnesota Timberwolf. Like Karl-Anthony Towns, Rob Dillingham, Anthony Edwards, Mike Conley, Naz Reid, one of those guys is going to be open and they're going to hit their shots. And so doubling Ant, I just don't know if that's the thing you can really do much anymore, right? So now you lose maybe your best Ant matchup in KCP. I certainly think the Nuggets get better offensively defensively, adding Russell Westbrook and Dario Saric. But I think in this scenario, the Nuggets are a little bit tired from that Kings series, running all up and down the floor. Now they have to play the most physical defense in the entire league, and it's a bad matchup for the Nuggets. They have the best Jokic solution of any team in the league, and that is Rudy Gobert, Naz Reid, and Karl-Anthony Towns. First of all, Cat played really good defensively in the playoffs last season, doesn't get enough credit for that. He also performed well offensively, and he's one of the more dynamic second options any team can have. I have the same result as last year. I think the Minnesota Timberwolves are just a bad matchup for the Nuggets, and it's unfortunate that in my scenario, the Nuggets ended up playing them again. Listen, the defense translates to the playoffs. You know, elite defensive play always does, and so I have the Wolves winning this series in 7 games. Again, if the Nuggets had played almost anyone else, I think even they could give the Thunder a lot of issues. I think the Mavs would be a better matchup. Like, there's just so many teams that the Nuggets would rather play than the Wolves. I actually think this is the worst matchup in the West for the Nuggets. It's unfortunate, but I have the Wolves advancing to the Western Conference Finals in a hard-fought 7-game series where they will play the OKC Thunder. Wolves make it back to the Western Conference Finals again for 2025, and they will play the most talented team in the West. How will they match up? We'll have to see when we come back here. For now, we're going to go back to the East. All right, folks, moment of truth. The Eastern Conference semis. Let's get into these series, starting with the Celtics and the Bucks. All right, obviously, I think the Celtics are the most talented team in the league, but that's not to say they're invincible. I mean, certainly we've seen super talented teams fall to less talented teams, and to say that the Bucks are a less talented team is true, but I don't think it's true by a vast margin. The Bucks are one of the top 5 most freakishly talented teams in the league, starting with Giannis. I mean, Giannis healthy for a playoff series, for an entire playoff run. Again, this is what I'm predicting. I have to go with healthy rosters, right? And so this could obviously change the outcome of my predictions, clearly, because when you have Giannis and Embiid both healthy, results are going to be different. But as far as Giannis and the Bucks go, right, I do think the increased chemistry as far as Dame and Giannis go is going to be a problem. It just is for a lot of these teams, right? I predict that to be the case. As far as the interior, I think Brook Lopez is going to provide a lot of challenges to the Celtics drive and kick, right? It's going to be harder to do that against a guy like Brook Lopez and Giannis Antetokounmpo roaming around as elite rim protectors and defenders. Defensively for the Celtics, I think, obviously it's going to be tough to stop Giannis. I think you have as good a chance as anyone having, the size that you do and the perimeter defenders that you do. When you have Drew Holiday and Derek White, who are going to be able to basically at any given time switch with Damian Lillard and guard Damian Lillard one-on-one as good as anyone in the league could, this could be a problem for the Bucks. We'll have to see what Chris Middleton looks like this season. He's the X factor for me. I think the Bucks give the Celtics a ton of issues. One of the problems with the Bucks is Doc Rivers, and if you know anything about Doc Rivers, just don't go up 3-1. All right, so if you keep it 3-2, you might win the series. All kidding aside, I do think the coaching, it plays a big factor in this series. The talent gap is there, but I don't think the matchup is as flawless as people think for the Celtics here. I'm going to go with the Celtics in 6 games. All right, the reason I don't think the Bucks just have what it takes to beat the Celtics and be that team to dethrone them, one of the bigger reasons again is Doc Rivers. I just think at the end of the day, it's hard to trust Doc Rivers with any situation in the playoffs. Okay, and so I think the Bucks, clearly I would maybe rank them towards the top of the teams in the East as far as what teams could challenge the Celtics. They might be number 1 or number 2. The thing for me is just that I think the Celtics perimeter defense is going to be a problem for guys like Chris Middleton. It's going to be a problem for guys like Damian Lillard. And so when you restrict those guys as much as the Celtics are gonna, I just don't know if that's going to be a winning recipe. All right, and so another thing is defensively, I think these teams are a little bit evenly matched on the interior, but as far as the wings go, I just don't know, other than Giannis, who is going to be guarding Jaylen Brown. When you have Chris Middleton maybe guarding Jaylen Brown, I just don't love that. The Celtics just have too much. That's kind of just the crux of it. I'm trying to work out ways that the Bucks could beat them, but I just don't see them in all reality having a high probability, and so I have the Celtics in 6. Unfortunately for the Bucks, another non-conference final year. Maybe something happens in the 2025 offseason. We'll have to see, but I do have the Celtics advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals once again. Now, this is the moment we're all waiting for here, folks. Knicks 76ers. I am going to be unbiased for this, all right? I'm going to try to be, okay? Obviously, this is like the series that I would be biased in if I could be. I'm really going to try to, regardless of the outcome, remain unbiased. Now, people, whatever outcome I give, people aren't going to like on either side. If I pick the Sixers to lose, my fan base is going to say, oh, well, you're just, you're siding with the Knicks for some reason. That's weird. If I pick the Sixers to win, Knicks fans are going to say I'm biased. So I'm going to just try to keep it strictly basketball, take all of my stuff out of it. The Knicks' biggest weakness to me is the interior. All right, no question. I mean, they need a backup 5 that's competent like Hartenstein was for them. Again, this is going to be something they have to address at the deadline. I'm sure they'll figure it out. I don't think Precious Achiuwa Achua is not a competent backup 5. I just think against the Sixers, he's gonna be, because at any given time, the Sixers center is either gonna be Embiid or Andre Drummond. And so these are two legit 7-foot, 280-pound guys that are monster interior threats. We could say Mitchell Robinson's a good size profile for one of them, but listen, Mitchell Robinson is not trustworthy to play 30 minutes a game, right? And so even if you're just gonna say Andre Drummond versus Precious Achua in the front court, Andre Drummond's just gonna eat that matchup alive, all right? And so, I think the Knicks really need a center that can space the floor to take some of these guys out of the paint. We'll have to see what happens with that. As far as the matchups for the Sixers defensively, I think the worst matchup the Sixers are going to struggle with in this series is with Julius Randle. They don't have a Julius Randle stopper, okay? Again, I mentioned before, the Sixers just don't have that power forward size profile or ability profile defensively. You could say Gershon Yabusele could maybe fit that role. We'll have to see what he looks like in the NBA. Haven't seen it in quite some time. That's the issue with the Sixers-Knicks matchup for me. I do think the center issue is a little bit worse for the Knicks, but as far as the perimeter goes, you have two great perimeter scorers on the Knicks and the Sixers, Maxey and Paul George, and honestly 3 for the Knicks. I think the Knicks have a little bit more of a versatile kind of bench situation, right? Like the Sixers have very limited skill sets off the bench, even though their bench players are good in my opinion. Sixers have a lot of small guards, Tyrese Maxey, Kyle Lowry, Eric Gordon, Jared McCain, Reggie Jackson. Like these guys are small. They're all really good players, but I think they're just pretty small. The Knicks have guys like Deuce McBride, who is small, but like Josh Hart coming off the bench, Dante DiVincenzo as a 6-man scorer. I'd be interested to see how Maxey does against like a OG Anunoby or a Mikal Bridges matchup. I don't think that's great. You do have a Paul George stopper in either one of those guys. The same could be said about the other end of the floor. So I think this is going to be like a dogfight, right? Like just a slugfest between two heavyweights in the East with extremely versatile lineups. I will be honest. I think the Sixers have a little bit more star power. I think that's fair to say, right? We have Embiid, at minimum top 10 player in the league. Maxey, maybe top 25, 30 player in the league. Paul George, top 30, top 25, top 20 player in the league. And so I think the role players around the stars for the Sixers is very complimentary. I think the same thing for the Knicks, who do have extremely high upside and high value star power as well. Listen, man, at the end of the day, I'm going to go with my 76ers. Listen, again, this is a no-win situation for me, whoever I pick, but just on the floor, I think the Sixers do have, you could say this is bias, and I'm sure a lot of people will, taking everything I feel and my bias out of the equation. I just think the Sixers have the better matchup against the Knicks right now, assuming everyone's healthy. Again, healthy Embiid, healthy PG, healthy Maxey, all, ready to go. Same thing for the Knicks on their side. I just think the Sixers are going to eat the Knicks alive on the interior. The Sixers are going to have a ton of perimeter issues with these two wings, right? No question about it. And Brunson is going to keep the Knicks close in games, and he's going to potentially put the Sixers out of games late in those games, right? In crunch time. But I just think overall, I think the Sixers are the better matchup on the interior, and that is a big deal for this Knicks team. They're going to have to address it at the deadline. A lot of this stuff could change. We see injuries all the time with my Sixers, but assuming everyone's healthy with the matchup we have, I'm going to have to go with my Sixers to win this series in 7 games and advance to their first conference finals since 2001 during the Allen Iverson era. And Embiid makes his first conference finals, where we will have to take on the juggernaut Boston Celtics. Again, Knicks, this could go either way. Even with everyone healthy, I think the Knicks are like this close to the Sixers. I actually think the Knicks might be a little bit better than the Sixers. I just don't think the matchup is favorable for the Knicks on the interior. And that is a big problem for me in a playoff series, because we know that certain things translate to the playoffs, certain things don't, right? And so one of the things that does for me always translate in the playoffs is interior size, rebounding, and the ability to dominate the paint. That's going to be like the biggest thing in almost every series at the end of the day. Star power is important. Obviously, you have to have the offensive firepower, star power. You always have to have a top 15 defense or so to kind of get to this level, but matchups are certainly one of the more important things. But like at the end of the day, whoever dominates the paint more usually ends up winning a series. And so I just think it's going to have to be the Sixers in this case. And for me personally, I'm excited to rank the Sixers and hopefully see them make the conference finals and hopefully dethrone the Celtics. We'll have to see how that turns out in a little bit. But at the end of the day, like, I'm not even trying to be biased here. Like, that's just kind of how, if everything shook out the way I predicted it would, this is how it would go, just objectively, I think. And you could disagree with me. I think the Sixers in 7. Hopefully I'm not being too crazy here with this pick. Let me know down in the comments section. Healthy Embiid, healthy Maxey, healthy PG, advance to the first conference final for my Sixers. And let's move over to the Western Conference to sort out this Wolves Thunder matchup. Let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here. We're officially at crunch time. This is the final stretch. Lock in. We're coming in for a landing here, folks. And in the Western Conference Finals, where it really starts to matter, this is where legends are made. This is where legends are dethroned. We have the Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. This is going to be a great series. It just is. Listen, the Minnesota Timberwolves, I think, have almost as good of a matchup with the Thunder as anybody. The problem I see with both teams, okay, here's the weakness of both teams. Here's the strength of both teams. The Minnesota Timberwolves' weakness is going to be their shot creation. You know, again, I mentioned this with the Mavericks. The Minnesota Timberwolves have to create a lot from the perimeter with their best player being Anthony Edwards. They can't just eat alive these interior matchups like they would have been able to last year with the Thunder, because the Thunder have the size now and they have the defensive versatility in the front court. Rob Dillingham is going to have an amazing series for this team to win. Everyone at the top of this roster is going to have to do everything they're supposed to. Rudy Gobert, Karl-Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, and Mike Conley. They're all going to have to perform their absolute best on both sides of the floor with no margin for error, because the Thunder are more talented of a team. Their offense in a half-court setting is going to be the determining factor of whether or not the Minnesota Timberwolves win this series. Naz Reid is going to have to step up big time against some of these backup bigs that come into the game. He's going to have to draw out guys like Chet Holmgren to the perimeter. He's going to have to draw out guys like Isaiah Hartenstein to the perimeter. Defensively, the Wolves match up excellently against the Thunder. I think even better of a defensive matchup. The Thunder's strengths in this matchup is their perimeter defense. No question. I mean, if you could take Anthony Edwards and, force him to take and make tough shots throughout an entire game, or even pass out of double teams through most of a game, you win the series very handedly. When you have guys with the perfect profiles and skill sets to match up against the Ant-Man, like Alex Caruso, like SGA, like Cason Wallace, and like Lou Dort, this is going to be a problem for the Timberwolves. I think the Thunder have way better shooting. I think Isaiah Joe, Chet Holmgren, J-Dub, like these guys are going to be really good from the catch and shoot department, right? They're going to try to take SGA out of the game. They're going to try to disrupt his flow and his rhythm. And so guys like Isaiah Joe, guys like Chet Holmgren, guys like J-Dub are going to have to step up in those spots. I think they have a better chance to do that than some of these Wolves guys. And I have the Oklahoma City Thunder advancing to the promised land of the NBA Finals for the first time in their franchise since 2012 with the Baby Thunder Big Three era. We've seen James Harden, we've seen Kevin Durant, we've seen Russell Westbrook all win MVPs in this league. We haven't seen the Thunder return to the finals since 2012. Imagine that. The Thunder make it to the finals, the most talented team in the West, as the 1 seed. It's tough. If you look at the history of this conference, if you look at the history of the Eastern Conference, you rarely see a 1 seed actually make it all the way and win a finals. We saw it last year with the Celtics. We'll see it again a few times, I'm sure, right? But will the Thunder have enough to take down the top Eastern Conference matchup in the finals? We'll have to see in just a second. But the Thunder, round of applause for your fans, for Sam Presti, for SGA, for J-Dub, for Chet Holmgren, for Mark Daigneault, and the rest of the organization. In my opinion, you are making the finals in 2025 as the most talented team in the West, top to bottom, offense, defense, and everything in between for the 2025 NBA playoffs. Round of applause. Back to the Eastern Conference. I have a very big stake in this series. There is two teams, one I hate, one I would die for. The 76ers. My 76ers versus the Boston Celtics. Man, it's hard for me to be unbiased, but I have to. The Sixers versus Celtics. Everyone's healthy. What are the strengths and weaknesses of both of these matchups? The Sixers, their strength is having a top 5 player in the world who is basically unguardable one-on-one. And the Celtics aren't going to be able to solve that problem with anyone they have on their roster, that's for sure, right? KP, he's too light. He's too thin to guard Embiid one-on-one. Al Horford, too slow. Tyrese Maxey could pose a threat to these elite perimeter defenders. The thing that Tyrese Maxey has above some of these other perimeter creators is his speed, blazing speed. And I think that's a good recipe if you're trying to counter a one-on-one defender with a lot of perimeter skill set, like handles, like playmaking, like, NBA bag talk, right? You're going to have some issues against Jrue Holiday and Derek White. More bag is not the solution to these defenders, but more speed could be. You just, at a certain point as a defender, you just can't outrun somebody. And that's the case for Jrue Holiday, and that's the case for Derek White, and that will be the case for Tyrese Maxey. He's going to pose a threat. The Sixers have great shooting. They're going to have great shooting this year. Paul George, this could be a tough matchup for Paul George. You have JT and JB, certainly capable of guarding a guy like Paul George. The Celtics have maybe the most switchable lineup in the NBA defensively, and offensively, all of their players can dribble, shoot, pass, and most of them can even create in a late shot clock situation. The Celtics' strength is everything. It just is. There's not too many weaknesses with this team. You could say sometimes some of their players get a little bit checked out mentally throughout a game and they kind of disappear and maybe get a little bit passive to each other. That's maybe the only weaknesses, right? You could say that maybe they won't be as hungry in 2025. It's got to be speculation, because on the court, with the skill sets everyone has already displayed for this team, the way they fit with each other, there are very, very few weaknesses, right? Now, the Sixers, again, I think they have better star power than the Celtics. As far as the big three goes, you could say it's a wash because the Sixers gap between Embiid and Maxey is a little bit larger than the gap between JB and JT and the rest of the guys. As far as compatibility, both of these teams, I think on paper, fit exceptionally well with each other. As far as coaching, it's pretty even. I think Mazzulla is a top tier coach. I think Coach Nurse is a top tier coach. As far as guys guys performing at their best in the playoffs. That's where the Celtics have the edge. Clearly they have shown last season that all of their players are capable of winning a championship. Their top players are capable of leading to a championship. We haven't seen that with the Sixers. Celtics are more talented, just flat out. Ladies and gentlemen, my prediction is the Boston Celtics will go back to the NBA Finals for the second straight year. I know this is boring and I hate it. I'm dying inside saying it. I'm kidding. I don't have a problem with the Celtics anymore because we haven't been good enough to beat them in quite some time. It just hurts. I am actually happy as a Sixers fan. If this is really the case, it happens this way, that we made it out of that second round, that awful, dead end, no good, absolute mountain and skyscraper of a second round. I'm just happy we made it out of there. And I got to be happy with an Eastern Conference Finals series. I predict the Celtics to win this series and face the Oklahoma City Thunder, both 1 seeds in their respective conferences, the top 2 most talented, versatile teams in the league, in my opinion. Doesn't matter what conference. If I had to pick who are the most talented, versatile, two-way teams in the league, I would pick Celtics 1, OKC 2. And so the Celtics, congratulations, Celtics fans, you made it back. This is going to be the question. Can you repeat the success? It's one thing to get there and do it once. It's another thing to maintain it. It's harder to repeat than anything else in this league. The hardest thing to do is form a dynasty, win 3 championships within a 10 or 5 year window, right? The Celtics have an opportunity to do that. I would expect them to have the same opportunity next season, making the 2025 NBA Finals, folks. You've made it this far. Congratulations. You're here for the outcome. All right. If you skipped all the way through the chapters, welcome. We've just predicted the entire NBA playoffs. Folks, let's lock in. Grab a snack, grab a soda. It's NBA Finals time. This is what we upload for. We have the 2 most versatile teams in the league, the Boston Celtics and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Celtics looking to reclaim their throne as NBA champions, be the first team to go back-to-back since the Golden State Warriors. They have one thing in mind, and that is repeat. The Oklahoma City Thunder, these are the challengers, right? The Thunder are the challengers coming into the historic Celtics throne room and saying, we're here to take that Larry O'Brien from you. In a hard-fought battle between 2 teams that basically have no weaknesses that I can see on paper. Defensively, the Celtics are as switchable as they come. Same thing can be said about the Oklahoma City Thunder. Offensively, both teams have dynamic scorers, perimeter shot creators, freak talents like Kristaps Porzingis and Chet Holmgren in the front court. What a matchup that'll be, huh? Savvy veterans like Alex Caruso, Al Horford, young guys looking to stamp their claim as NBA legends. SGA, J-Dub, Chet Holmgren, exceptional all-time great two-way talented wings looking to stake their claim and further solidify their status as NBA legends. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum's gonna have a lot to prove in this series. People said he was out. People said he was the second best player. He's not him. He's not the guy. I think if Jason Tatum makes it back to the finals, which I do think he will, he is going to go on a rampage against this Oklahoma City Thunder team. Listen, folks, this is not going to be an easy one to predict. Again, how do you predict an outcome between 2 teams without any weaknesses? Well, that's why you watch these videos, folks. The winner of the Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Boston Celtics 2025 NBA Finals. 2 teams without weaknesses. 2 teams with insurmountable odds. The Thunder looking to be one of the youngest teams to ever win a title. The Thunder looking to be maybe the only team that could dethrone this Boston Celtics team. No one in the East could do it for 2 years in a row. They're looking to rain on Boston's parade. They're looking to be the first Oklahoma City Thunder team to ever win an NBA Finals in their franchise history. The Celtics, insurmountable odds, looking to overcome what is the absolute mountain of a task that is repeating as NBA champions. Can they do it? The Boston Celtics versus Oklahoma City Thunder series, this will be another installation of a 7-game final series, and it will be a close one, folks. This will be tit for tat, back and forth. In Game 7 of the NBA Finals in 2025, the Boston Celtics repeat as NBA champions, hold the Larry O'Brien trophy for either the 19th or 20th time or 28th time or 40th time, it feels like to me. I can't even remember. At this point, it's just too many to count. The Celtics win back-to-back. They need one more to solidify themselves as an NBA dynasty. The Thunder end up going home in defeat against just a little bit more of a talented team and just a little bit more of an experienced team in a prime window, just like they did in 2012 during the Miami Heat series. They go home defeated, but with their heads high, that they were able to do what only KD, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden were able to do for this franchise, take their team to the finals as young guns coming up. And certainly they will be back and better than ever for 2026. But the Celtics, Jason Tatum holds the Larry O'Brien trophy and the Bill Russell Award for Finals MVP for the first time in his career. Jason Tatum, congratulations. Green confetti reigns in the TD Garden. Commissioner Silver hands Jason Tatum the trophy, and here's the image we see. Of course, he'll be wearing a different shirt. This is just the picture from last year. But listen, Celtics are going to repeat, folks. I have news for you. As far as everything goes right now, on a more serious note, hopefully that was entertaining for you guys, but on a more serious note, they just have the best team in the league. They just have the best team in the world. The only one who can dethrone them, in my opinion, are a couple Eastern Conference teams. That includes the Sixers, the Bucks, and the Knicks. Everybody else is fodder for the Celtics. In the Western Conference, there are a couple teams that match up well against the Celtics, including the Denver Nuggets, the Dallas Mavericks, the OKC Thunder, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Those are the only teams I could see beating the Celtics in a 7-game series, but I really don't think anyone will, because the Celtics are just too good, folks. I know that's kind of a boring result, right? Both teams from the Western Conference and the East as 1 seeds making the finals, and the Celtics just winning again, repeating, right? Might not be the most exciting, jaw-dropping result, right? But, you know, I do think at a certain point, you just gotta be realistic, man. And realistic isn't always the most exciting thing. And so I have the Celtics winning again. I just think that's the most likely outcome. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I tried to put a little bit more of a creative spin on this one as opposed to part 1 and part 2 of the series. Again, if you haven't seen those, it's a more analytical view of each team. Make sure you guys check those out. Eastern Conference, Western Conference predictions. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this kind of more of a entertainment, content-filled kind of thing. But, you know, these are really my predictions if everyone's healthy. You know, hopefully guys, if you do disagree with them, let me know down in the comment section. You know, you can provide constructive criticism to my list. Just try not to be hateful or, you know, disrespectful. That's, you know, that stuff isn't super helpful to anyone, and I just don't like having it in the comments. So please try to keep it respectful. If you do disagree, that's fine. I'm open to being wrong. I'm wrong all the time, and I will be wrong about some stuff on this list. You know, look forward to more videos on the channel like this. If you guys do subscribe, you know, I really appreciate it. We're on the road to 15K, and we're looking to get there as fast as possible, and we try to create content just like this every single day on the channel. So if you guys don't want to miss more content like this, make sure you guys subscribe. And honestly, probably I'll do another one of these 3-part series during the mid-season. So like around the All-Star break, I'll probably do another one, and then after the All-Star break, like right before the playoffs, I'll do a full playoff prediction video. Again, it's hard to predict a lot of these series because teams change year to year, man. Like not even just the rosters, but like how they play. Like teams could, you know, form new identities. They might not, you know, match up well based on the stuff that's changed from last year to this year. I just don't know that stuff because we haven't seen the full body of work. So hopefully guys do subscribe if you want more predictions in the future. Thank you guys for watching it all the way to the end of the video. I really appreciate you. And yeah, you know, drop a like on the video, subscribe. Let me know down in the comment section any feedback that you have for this video. I would appreciate it, positive or negative, as long as it's not disrespectful. Follow my Twitter, follow my Twitch. I'll be streaming on Twitch NBA 2K content pretty regularly, so please go follow that if you could. Subscribing and liking the video so more people find it is the biggest thing you could do. And hopefully you guys have a fantastic rest of your day today. Let me know who you think will win the finals in the 2025 playoffs. Hopefully you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, morning, night, whenever it is, weekend or week, whatever it is. I love basketball and I can't wait for the season to start, and I can't wait to make more content for you guys. This is your boy D Haven. As always, peace.